The autumn air around the Aldrin estate carried a crisp bite, the kind that made the gold and crimson leaves shimmer under the late afternoon sun. Preston Aldrin, a man whose name was synonymous with real estate empires and billion-dollar deals, stood on the terrace of his sprawling Connecticut mansion, staring out across the manicured lawns. From the outside, his life looked flawless: money, influence, and a home that could fit 20 families. But what the public never saw was the quiet space at the dining table, the empty chair that had been there since his wife, Marianne, passed away 4 years ago. That absence was felt most deeply by their daughter, Sienna, a bright, fiercely independent 9-year-old whose smile lit up rooms but whose heart still carried the weight of loss. That weekend was supposed to change everything. Preston had decided, in his own unique way, that he was ready to remarry. But rather than choosing for himself, he placed the decision in Sienna's hands. It was unconventional, almost absurd to some, but Preston told himself it was about giving his daughter a say in the future of their family. Over one weekend, 5 women each from wealthy, powerful backgrounds were invited to the estate. All knew exactly what was at stake: win over Sienna, and they'd have a direct path to becoming Mrs. Preston Aldrin. The women arrived one by one in sleek black cars. Their introductions were like a fashion magazine come to life: perfect hair, diamond earrings catching the sunlight, designer luggage rolled in by assistants. There was Charlotte Vance, a tech CEO who had made millions before turning 30. Miranda Devereaux, a socialite whose family's name was etched into half the city's landmarks. Alina Kerr, a glamorous art dealer. Tatiana Price, a philanthropist, known for her high-profile charity galas. And Victoria Hensley, an attorney whose sharp wit was matched only by her perfectly tailored suits. From the start, Sienna felt the shift in the house. The air seemed thicker, every laugh from the guests a little too polished, every glance toward her father just a little too strategic. At 9 years old, she didn't have the vocabulary for performative affection, but she could feel it. Every compliment felt rehearsed. Every question about her favorite hobbies sounded like it belonged in a job interview. The only person who didn't change in those days was Lorraine Baptiste. She'd been the Aldrin housekeeper since before. Sienna could walk, a woman in her early 40s with warm brown skin, kind eyes, and a voice that carried a soft Caribbean lilt. Lorraine wasn't part of the weekend's plan. She was in the background, as always, serving breakfast, quietly tidying rooms, making sure Preston's shirts were pressed and Sienna's bedtime routine stayed the same. Lorraine had been there. Through the worst days, the day Marianne died, the months of silence that followed, the nights when Sienna woke crying and couldn't explain why. She was there for the small victories too. Every art project Sienna brought home from school, every scraped knee, every bad dream chased away with a whispered story. But the women didn't see Lorraine as anything more than part of the staff. Charlotte once handed her an empty coffee cup without even looking up from her phone. Miranda asked her to be a dear and fetch a wrap from the sunroom in the middle of dinner. None of them realized that every time Lorraine walked into the room, Sienna's shoulders seemed to relax. By Saturday afternoon, Preston was beginning to feel the strain of the whole arrangement. He'd been polite, attentive to each guest, but he was watching his daughter carefully. He wanted her to feel something genuine for at least one of these women. That evening, he arranged a formal dinner, a grand, final opportunity for the guests to make their impression before Sienna made her decision. The dining room glittered under crystal chandeliers, silverware gleaming against fine china. The women were dressed in their finest, laughter flowing as easily as the wine. Sienna sat quietly through most of it, pushing food around her plate. Preston noticed, but before he could say anything, Lorraine stepped up to serve dessert. Sienna's eyes brightened instantly. Lorraine set down a plate of her famous pineapple upside-down cake, something she had made for Sienna every birthday since she was 3. It was a simple gesture, but in a room full of rehearsed charm, it felt like the only real thing that had happened all night. And then it happened. Preston cleared his throat and said gently, "Sienna, I think it's time." "Who do you choose?" The room stilled. 5 perfectly poised women leaned ever so slightly forward, holding polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Sienna's small hands rested in her lap as she looked at each of them in turn. Then she turned to Lorraine. I choose Lorraine. She said, her voice steady. The shock was instantaneous. Charlotte blinked like she hadn't heard right. Miranda's smile faltered. Elena's wineglass stopped halfway to her lips. Victoria leaned back in her chair, her lawyer's composure cracking. Tatiana opened her mouth, then closed it again. Lorraine froze, her serving tray trembling slightly in her hands. Sweetheart, she began softly. I'm not, but Sienna cut her off. You're the only one who's always been here. You're the only one who knows me. I don't want someone who's here for Daddy's money. I want someone who loves us. The room was silent except for the faint ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Preston's chest tightened, a rush of emotions hitting him: pride, surprise, guilt for not having realized sooner what his daughter truly needed. One of the women laughed lightly, trying to break the tension. That's adorable, but she's just the housekeeper. Sienna's chair scraped loudly against the polished floor as she stood. Her small frame seemed to grow taller. She's not just anything, she's my family. Preston's eyes met Loren's, and in that moment he understood exactly what his daughter meant. Money could buy almost anything, but it couldn't buy the quiet, unwavering love that had been standing right there in the background all along. The evening unraveled quickly after that. The guests made polite but swift exits, each hiding their disappointment behind air-kissed goodbyes. By the time the last car pulled away from the driveway, the house felt lighter, as though it had taken its first real breath in years. Later that night, Preston knocked softly on Loren's door. She looked uncertain, standing there in her modest robe, her hair pulled back. I'm not asking you for an answer tonight, Preston said, his voice low. But I want you to know, if you'll have us, I'd be honored to build a family with you, not because of what Sienna said, but because I see it too now. You've been our anchor all along. Loren's eyes glistened, and for a moment she couldn't speak. Finally, she nodded. We'll see, Preston. But no matter what, I'll always be here for her. As Preston walked back down the hall, he knew this weekend had started as a game of choosing a wife, but had ended as something much more important, a moment of clarity about what family really meant. And as for Sienna, she slept soundly that night, knowing that sometimes the truest love doesn't come with diamonds or designer dresses. Sometimes it's been right beside you all along, wearing a warm smile and carrying a tray of pineapple cake.